welcome. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 1007, There's a River Flowin' in My Soul. Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning. I'm Klaus Obermeit, and I serve this church. One of the ways I serve this church is as chair of the worship committee. We handle the service when our settled minister, Reverend J. Wolin, is not in the pulpit. Today we welcome Reverend Kolani Kachela, interim senior minister of the First Unitarian Church of San Jose, California, and we'll be hearing more from him shortly. I also want to welcome our guest musicians, Carl Haan on the piano and Tasha Robinson at the harp. You can find out more about us and Unitarian Universalism on our website, uusrq.org. There's a link at the top of the homepage which will take you to our virtual guest book. Sign up and we will send you our weekly newsletter and Zoom links to our virtual events. For visitors here on campus, there's a sign-up sheet outside. And as always, we invite you to join us for coffee and conversations after the service. We look forward to getting to know you. I have a special announcement. As we do every first Sunday of the month, if you would like to become a member of the church, please join Reverend J, Board Chair Bill Payton, and Chair of our membership team, Joan Bennett, in the minister's office after the service. The minister's office is in the Lexo wing across the courtyard. And then there's an announcement, join our Transformative Foundations of Racial Equity workshop. It's on Monday, March 11th, that's a week from Monday, at 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. right here at this church. Join our workshop where participants engage in a deep exploration of race, dissect the interplay between racism and power dimensions, and map out the structures of racism. This dynamic experience includes activities guiding participants to consider their community's place on the intercultural competency continuum, gain insights, build skills, and leave equipped to advance racial equity in organizations and communities. This workshop is guided by experienced artist and facilitator Yolady Rosario Hernandez, and it offers practical tools for meaningful change. Join us on the journey towards a more equitable future. And Nina Tortelli is the person to see. Nina, she's right there. She'll be at the social justice table after the service. Okay. And now we welcome to our stage Tasha Robinson performing for us on her electric harp.
Good morning. I'm Kalani Kachela. I see we have a few people who are coming in to be seated. I give them a moment. While they're seated or being seated, I want to say that I am, for those who are sight impaired, I'm an African-American man, 60-ish, low hair, light brown glasses, and a yellow colorful stove that my beautiful wife made for me. Our opening words are a responsive reading. They're from our hymnal, the gray hymnal, number 466. I'd like to invite you to rise in body and or spirit and recite them with me. They're called Religion. I'll read the first line or the straight text and invite you to read the italics or the yellow. Let religion be to us life and joy.
Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous actions.
Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bide us serve more eagerly the true and right.
Let it be the sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity.
Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood.
An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and of courage.
Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders.
Let it be to us hope and purpose, and a discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tasks.
Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere.
Holding before our eyes the prospect of a better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual.
You may be seated. It's time for our chalice lighting. Okay. As we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, please join with me as we affirm our sixth principle. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Transformation, the ability to change in a positive fashion, is our theme this month. And as Unitarian Universalists, we recognize that the wisdom to effect change in ourselves and the world around us is found in many different sources. So today's story honors the wisdom of a great spiritual leader, and you will have a part at the end, so don't fall asleep. Today's story is Be the Change, a Grandfather Gandhi story by Arun Gandhi and Bethany Hegedus, illustrated by Evan Turk and adapted by myself. The ashram, my grandfather's service village, revolved around the sun. Before daybreak, we left our beds, gathering for the morning prayer. Peace descended upon us like rays of the sun. All religions were welcome. Each day was filled from sunrise to sunset with service as we worked washing clothes and picking fruit, spinning yarn. Anything that needed doing was done for the good of the all. Grandfather dubbed our work Experiments in Truth. Of the 11 vows of the ashram living, to lead a simple, nonviolent life, the one I found the hardest was the vow not to waste. I wasn't sure how wasting food or other items made life more violent, but I did my best to follow Grandfather's teachings. So one day, Grandfather asked that I accompany him to Nature Cure Clinic for a gathering. Oh, I was so excited. I was going to get a break from the ashram life. But it was just the same. Grandfather spoke to the crowd. When nonviolence is accepted as the law of life, it must pervade the whole being and not apply to isolated acts. How was I supposed to understand that? My head even hurt just thinking about it. On my way home from my lessons, I had had enough. As I walked, I tossed my nubby pencil into the air, tired of my vow not to waste, tired of not understanding. It bounced into the grass, and I left it there on purpose. That night, I asked Grandfather for a new pencil. This morning, you had what appeared to be a perfectly good pencil, he replied. It was too small, and I threw it away, I argued. I didn't share with him what I was really thinking, that I was a Gandhi, and didn't I deserve a new pencil? It was not too small this morning. And what of your vow? What? The one not to waste? I replied as I stared at my feet. A vow is a promise to yourself before it is one to others. Why is a nubby pencil so important? I asked. It is not the pencil, but you that is important, he replied, patting my shoulder. Oh, why is he always talking in riddles? Why isn't there just a simple explanation? You will have to go and look for it, Grandfather stated. But it's dark outside. So Grandfather handed me a flashlight and pointed me towards the night. I knew I still had much to learn, but I was frustrated as I ran my fingers through the grass. Finally, after hours of searching, I found it and I charged back home. I had found the pencil, but I still hadn't discovered what waste and nonviolence had to do with each other, or what they had to do with me. How could throwing away a pencil hurt anyone? It made no sense. Why couldn't I understand? Waste is a violent action, Grandfather said. When resources are low, people hoard, and those who are forced to do without may eventually strike out. Fighting, he occurs. Is that what you wanted when you threw away your pencil? Well, of course not. Grandfather suggested that I make a tree of violence, where violence was the trunk, and physical violence on one side and passive violence on the other were the two branches. Passive violence is stuff that looks like it hurts no one, like throwing away a pencil or being a member of a country club. Before you act, who would it hurt? You? Someone else? The earth? Does hurting the earth hurt us? Each day I added my thoughts and actions to the tree. And my tree grew and grew. Both branches were heavy with leaves, but the passive side was enormous. Soon I could see how throwing away my pencil could hurt others, as more graphite was mined, destroying the land. More trees would be cut down, harming the life that depended on it being there. Were my wants, like the need for a new pencil, or the want for a new pencil, more important than the need of others? I saw how kicking and shoving led to rioting, that violence led to more violence, and wars led to more wars. I finally understood that I was responsible for my every thought and action, but I was also responsible for the thoughts and actions of the world. To change the world, I needed to change myself. So Grandfather had a saying that he had shared with many, and now he said it to me. Be the change you wish to see in the world, Arun. And with him as an example, I would. So please recite with me the Be the Change pledge. I pledge to dig deep, to understand passive violence, to find the roots of my thoughts and actions. I pledge not to overuse resources, to focus on my needs over my wants. I pledge to learn to work with others as one for the good of all. And I pledge to be the change I wish to see in the world. So I now invite our children and our youth to join their teachers in their classroom as we learn more about transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha, for the beautiful rendition of We Could Be One, a favorite of Unitarian Universalist. Our centering reading is from the great American and civil rights advocate, leader, who was on the forefront of bringing change to the world and to this country, W.E.B. DuBois. He writes, "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness for tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime." I invite you to a moment of meditation. rise for our centering song number 123. Good morning, UUs of Sarasota. Dr. XK here with a quick warm-up and centering message for you. The world needs to hear your voice. Not your singing voice, but your UU voice. Don't for a minute believe you don't have something worthwhile to share with others. Many people have never heard the UU principles and never will if you don't tell them. But more importantly, folks are yearning to hear your truth. They need to know your why. Why are you a UU? Let them know you are the voice of love. That's right, LUUV. What the world needs now is more love, sweet love. With your loving UU voice spreading good news of UUism, we are bound to change the world. Peace. It is now time for our offering. And offer you these words. Please be as generous as you can. For those online or those here on your cell phone, there is a link to donate in the description of the YouTube video or on our website right under the description of today's service. Let this sacred time begin. I like all this clapping in here. It makes me feel like I'm very welcome. and that you're very appreciative. I'm sure that Carl is really enjoying it and swooping it up also, likewise for Tasha. So thank you all for being so generous with your applause and appreciation. Today's reading is from the Benedictine monk, Brother David Stiendl-Rast. He's a well-written author from the Benedictine tradition, and I heard him speak on the podcast or radio program On Being with Krista Tippett. I imagine many of you know Krista Tippett. She's one of the great Americans, and I think President Obama gave her one of the highest awards that he could award a civilian for her work in culture and religion and spirituality. The reading is titled On Religion and Spirituality. Religion is a difficult word because it really combines two very different things, and you're never quite sure which one you're talking about when you say religion. Humans are religious beings, all humans. That means we are open toward this great mystery that some use the word God for. But whether they use it or not, we are all confronted with that great mystery as human beings. And in that sense, religiousness is very close to spirituality. The other thing is, out of this religiousness, human beings have at certain times in history created historical and social bodies that are called the religions or the religious traditions. Usually starts with a founder that is a particularly spiritual person, deeply spiritual, and then it gets a kind of life of its own. It kind of hardens, it kind of freezes. So I compare these religions that we find in the world with old volcanoes. At one time, they were spewing fire and were a gorgeous spectacle. And now the lava has hardened, and nobody would recognize that that was at one point fire. It's all rock. But here and there, somebody comes along like Mother Teresa, Oscar Romero, Cesar Chavez, whoever, and makes a little crack. And out comes this live fire again. And there you have to do with it the warmth and fervor of your own heart. Each one of us, we have a certain responsibility. And if we stand in a particular religion, and that has its own great advantages because it gives us forms, it gives us examples, it gives us relatives and all the others that ever belong to it and will ever belong to it. It's a good, healthy embedding, but it also costs a lot of work, inner work. Brother David Stiendl-Rast. Well, good morning again. I'm Kalani Kachaler. My pronouns are he, him, or XK. And I want to thank Klaus for joining me in the pulpit this morning. And also give a shout out to my colleague Jay Wallen, who's invited me and opened his pulpit to another colleague. We came here from California, and when we left, we brought with us a lot of sunshine. And it looks like Florida has vetoed our action. Well, I want to talk today about how you can change the world. We heard a great story from Catherine on change, and some of my message will resonate with hers. The question I ask from the beginning is, have you ever considered how sharing your UU origin story can impact you, your family, and your community? If Unitarian Universalism is going to thrive in a world that desperately needs our message, each of us must take the responsibility of making our UU voice heard. The writer Leo Tolstoy said that everyone thinks of change or making change, but no one thinks of changing themselves. So today, I want to give you the keys to how you can change yourself in order to become a world changer. We start with the story of Eliezer ben Yehuda. Now here's the man who changed the world by reviving spoken Hebrew. Born in 1858 in Ludsky, part of the Russian Empire, Ben Yehuda dreamed that Jews all over the world should have a common language to communicate with each other. At the time, no one spoke modern Hebrew as a native language. European Jews spoke Yiddish, but that is a German derivative. He tied this dream, this belief that he had, to the establishment of the Jewish homeland. So he knew he needed to have these two things together. He taught his child to become the first native modern Hebrew speaker. And then he wrote the first modern Hebrew dictionary. Today, over 7 million Jews all over the world speak modern Hebrew. So from this story, we know what Ben Yehuda's beliefs and values were. He believed that Jews needed to have a shared language, and he valued and tied that to the establishment of a Jewish homeland. Now, UUs also value having a shared language. In fact, we are united by our principles, and we're united by the covenants that we keep. UUs speak a variety of spiritual languages, which makes us quite unique. We have a variety of practices and origins within our tradition. But we do have our principles, and they unite us. I want to encourage each of us, each of you, to know your values, your deep beliefs, and all your deep spiritual convictions. When you do this, you become more comfortable in your own body. It is, to me, as essential as the air we breathe. And when you get this level of comfort of knowing what your beliefs and values are, then you are more empowered to align your beliefs with your actions. I am a big fan of the Netflix series, The Crown. Does anybody here watch The Crown? By show of hands. Many people watch The Crown. Even in the back, the tech team is saying they watch The Crown too. Well, I love that program because it gives us a visible image or depiction, it's fictional, of how Queen Elizabeth lived out her values and her deep faith convictions. In one episode, the Queen discovers that her education differed from that of her non-sovereign peers. So while they were learning science and arts and literature and math, she was taught the British Constitution. And she said they gave her a sense of being at a disadvantage. She used the word that I'm starting out on my rear foot. And when talking with world leaders, she felt that she didn't have quite the skills she needed or the knowledge she needed to engage with them effectively. So she hires a tutor. Professor Fogg is his name. And Professor Fogg was brought in to help her expand her knowledge in order to allow her to work with leaders around the world and be effective. But what Professor Fogg taught her was she already had the beliefs, the values, and the ability to exercise the duties and responsibilities of the crown. Now, in this episode, something remarkable happens. The Prime Minister has a series of strokes. It's Winston Churchill. He has not one, but two strokes. And Churchill and his administration, his senior leaders, consciously decided to withhold that information from the Queen. But something happened. Her personal secretary came in for a conversation with her and let on that something had happened by mistake. When she heard this, she was quite astounded. So she goes to Professor Fogg and she says, "This is what has happened to me." And he says, "Well, what are you going to do?" The Queen says, "Not a thing. That's my job, to stay silent at all times and do nothing." Professor says, "Is it?" He said, "Under such circumstances, isn't it also your duty to act?" She says, "I don't know." To which he says, "I think you know precisely." And she says, "I do." After which time she goes to Churchill for what they call the private audience and gives him a clean, clear dressing down for not letting her know what took place. In fact, the professor told her that men of that age and that century, all they wanted was someone like their mother to tell them what to do. That is exactly what she did. Well, UUs have the same ability and authority and power to exercise the duties of our chosen faith. But sometimes this can be difficult if we don't know what we believe in and what we stand for. You can go to a spiritual director or a spiritual advisor, or you can check in with your minister to help you get clear about what your values are and what your convictions are. But ultimately, the work belongs to you. You must do this inner work. There are two types of people: those who talk about what they believe in, and then there are those who actually live out what they believe in on a day-to-day basis. Our task is to align our beliefs and our actions. As UUs, that means that we commit to love, compassion, justice, being a lifelong learner, and abiding by our principles. And here we have 8 principles in the Sarasota congregation. Our actions are tied to worshiping in community, as we are doing today, siding with love, and then sharing the good news of Unitarian Universalism with others, letting people know that we are devoted UUs. I'm getting a little dry here. Let me get some water. That brings me to number 2. And I want you to share this with me. Say it out loud. Engage in spiritual practices.
Engage in spiritual practices.
The idea here is that to really engage in this work, you need to embody or create spiritual practices that embody your beliefs and your actions. For example, if you have a relationship with nature, You can create spiritual practices that get you outside into the wild, hiking, riding, all kinds of things that will get you outside into nature. I once taught a class called Spiritual Fitness. And in this class, 2 women discovered they had a common love for nature. They shared a passion for gardening, for flowers and growing flowers, and for immersing themselves in natural beauty. So they made a pact with themselves that they would gather at the local botanical gardens every week, at least one day a week, and they would sit on a bench together and they would just immerse themselves in the natural beauty around them. Now, when the rest of the class heard this, they were inspired, and they too began to create a spiritual practice that somewhat mirrored their actions and their beliefs. Now, for me, I have a variety of spiritual practices. I engage in meditation, and I attend a monthly clergy support group that helps me maintain my well-being. Spiritual practices are something I really put a lot of stock in. And like most of you, or many of us, I struggle to keep my heart open. That is something that we all want to do, keep our hearts open, and to be non-judgmental, and to be slow to anger. That third one can be very difficult in this very divisive world that we live in. But to accomplish this, I have layers of spiritual practices. And for me, that means they're like Russian nested dolls. One fits inside the other to form the whole. And there I am in the very center and the smallest doll. These practices really help me just work through what I consider to be a vital part of the spiritual or religious life that Unitarian Universalists seek to make their own. Now, people ask me, what is the purpose of spiritual practices? Another word for them is spiritual disciplines. And the answer is straightforward. By engaging in a regular spiritual practice, you open yourself up to enlightenment. That is, the wisdom of the world, or the wisdom of the great traditions, or the becoming the human that we all aspire to be. As we heard earlier from Catherine, it helps us to become and be the change. Let's say that together. It helps us to become and be the change. One way that you can intentionally induce enlightenment is to create what I call a spiritual timeline. Now, I did this several years ago with the help of my spiritual director. And what this entails is mapping out your spiritual lifeline from the beginning. And I did mine, and when I did it, I found many amazing events that had shaped who I am and who I had become. There were many connections, and there were many links between one event and the other. I want to encourage you to do this. It's not that difficult, and I'll give you the few steps. You're going to sit down with yourself, whether with pencil and paper or your electronic device, and write down the first or the earliest memory you have of something that occurred to you that might have been, you might call spiritual, or some awakening, something that moved you from the inside out. So, for example, it may be your first time saying your bedtime prayers when you were a kid with your parent or maybe your grandparent. I would say my prayers with my grandmother, who I lived with growing up. Or it may be the first time that you said or recognized there was a grace at the table for a meal. For others, it may be something that if you were a UU growing up, perhaps your first time attending a RE class, learning the principles or the kids' version of the principles. You get that down, and then you go to the next significant memory that you have. It could be confirmation, if you grew up in another faith. If you grew up at UU, it could be attending coming of age, a bridging ceremony. Whatever it is that you feel was the next thing that really woke up your spirit, your sense of development and growing into who you are now. And you just keep on going. And you'll have this timeline that lays out how you have become who you are today. At some point, you will end up where you are now in your current stage of adult development or spiritual development, however you want to classify your place in the world today. Now, perhaps the most transformative spiritual practice that you can do is number 3. I want you to say this with me again, and that is to share your UU origin story. Let's say that together. Share your UU origin story. And to me, this is like going to the gym. I like to go to the gym and work out, but we have to do this spiritually also and within our way of becoming who we are. So you start out with light weights at the gym, and you build up until you have heavy weights. So perhaps you will start out sharing just a small part of your story, and then eventually, as you become more comfortable sharing that story with other people, it'll become more deep and a very engaging narrative. In a 2013 UU World magazine interview, and UU World, I'm sure most of us know, is the periodical produced by the UUA, a well-known Hollywood icon shared her spiritual journey with the readership. She said, "I was born into the UU church because my parents were members of the Unitarian Society of Sacramento. And it was there that I had my naming ceremony." Now, this is a huge world changer. She is an actor and a film director. And last year, her latest release was a worldwide blockbuster and changed many people's lives. The film was Barbie. And the director is Greta Gerwig. That's right, Greta Gerwig was born into the UU faith. Truth be told, Greta Gerwig converted to Catholicism. We're not going to hold it against her. But sharing your UU faith is really critical. And I know when I began to pursue UU ministry, I was originally a United Methodist minister, that people were going to perceive me differently as a minister. In fact, when my wife and I got married, people began to challenge her also, thinking that she had somehow abandoned her faith or her tradition of origin. I think they felt that she was guilty by association. Because people know the Baptists, they know Methodists, which my wife is, but they don't really know Unitarian Universalism. But the hardest part, and I think this is the true test of spiritual maturity, is to share your UU story with your family of origin. Those who have families still around when we're younger, to go back home to the people who really put the most pressure on you to stay the same. We call that in clinical terms homeostasis, right? The family wants you to stay as you are, don't change, do the things that you grew up that they taught you what to do. So you go home and you go to your family and tell them you're really putting yourself to the test. I remember when I told my mother and my sister, my wife and I had traveled from North Carolina to Columbus, Georgia, where I grew up. And both of my family members, my mother and my sister, were really staunch Christian, African Methodist Episcopal Church members. So we had been there for a few days vacationing, and I told my wife, I said, I think I need to share, it's time for me to share with them that I have transitioned to the UU faith. And she said, I don't think you want to do that. But I said, I got to do it. I got to be clean. I got to keep it 100. So I'm going to do this. So we went to a restaurant, and I think it was Applebee's or something like that, and we had sat down, and we had ordered our food, and they were eating these baby back ribs. Everybody likes baby back ribs, right? So I said to myself, I looked at Tamara and said, this is the time. So as they were chewing those ribs, I said, I have something I need to tell you all. And they just kept on eating. And I said, I need you to hear this. So I said, I have switched from being a Methodist minister to being a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I gave them just a brief few lines of what that meant. And I just sat back and waited for a response. Crickets. Nothing but crickets. They just kept on eating. So I said, okay, at least I said it. Finally, my sister said, what did you say? So then I broke it down to her that I had become a Unitarian Universalist minister and what that meant. But I told them that I still love them. I was still the same person that they knew me to be, except for this one significant change, which was how I viewed the world and how I viewed the life of faith and as a minister and how I was going to practice my spirituality. It wasn't, abandoning the family. I wasn't going to become estranged from them because I was a UU, even though my mother think I was estranged. And my mother never said anything. In fact, later, in another conversation away from the restaurant, I think she finally told my wife, we didn't really raise him to be like that. But that's who he is now. But in that moment, I had enormous gratitude and gratefulness for our UU faith. Because gratitude is really the biggest spiritual practice that I have. And it reminded me of what David Stiendl-Rast says about religious traditions. UU tradition is relatively small compared to the major faiths. So we need all of us to be vocal and to share with others that we are devoted UUs. Brother David Stiendl-Rast says that religions, and I consider this a religious tradition, are like dormant volcanoes that were once spewing fire that have now solidified into rock. And every now and then, someone comes along like a Eliezer ben Yehuda, or Greta Gerwig, or you, to create cracks in the rock. And we do that with the warmth and the passion of our heart, he says. This reminds me of what Dr. King says. He says, what affects one directly affects all indirectly. If each of us shares our UU faith with one person directly, we have the potential to impact countless others indirectly. And our third principle speaks to this very clearly. It says that we will accept one another and we encourage spiritual growth in our congregations. Let's rehash just very quickly the three things that you're going to do to change the world. Number one, you're going to know your beliefs and values and your principles. Let's say that. Know your beliefs, values, and principles. Number two, you're going to create spiritual practices that embody those beliefs. So create spiritual practices that embody those beliefs. And finally, you're going to share your UU origin story. Share your UU origin story. And let people know that you are a devoted UU. I'll close with this quote from Mother Teresa, who says that, I alone cannot change the world, but I can create countless ripples by casting a stone across the waters. Each of us has the ability to cast a UU stone across the waters and create countless ripples. And in doing so, we will change the world. Amen? Amen. Ashe, and may it be so. Well, I cheated you out of a seated reading earlier, so I'm going to invite you to sit down now. For the centering reading, you were supposed to be seated, or the centering singing you were. Okay. But I do want to invite you to help me with this responsive reading number 468, We Need Each Other. Again, I'll read the white part and you'll read the yellow. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when you have accomplished some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
I want to thank you again for allowing me to be a visitor to this great pulpit and to enjoy all the great fellowship here that you have and the you love that I have felt, and also for my wife Tamara. We will extinguish the flame, or the chalice. We extinguish our flame,
But not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Keep your heads up and your hearts open, my friends. Go in peace.